Good evening and welcome to the National Capital Authority's Community Forum. My name's Catherine McGrath. I'm your facilitator for this evening. It's wonderful to be here in the beautiful auditorium of the National Library. I would like to start by welcoming Auntie Violet to the front, please, for a welcome to country. Thanks, Auntie Violet.
Thank you so much. Is this one okay?
Yep, that one's fine.
Oh, thank you. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the land of the Ngunnawal people and to the National Capital Authority Community Forum. But I'd also like to acknowledge NCA Chair Terry Weber and NCA Chief Executive Karen Durham and staff here as well. But ladies and gentlemen, I would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as the traditional owners. I'm a senior Ngunnawal elder. I'm also a matriarch. So I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present and emerging and extend that respect for any First Nations people here this evening. But I'd also like to acknowledge all the non-Indigenous people in the room as well, and also the many cultures that are here this evening. In keeping in the general spirit of friendship and reconciliation, it gives me great pleasure once again to welcome you to the land of the Ngunnawal people. And on behalf of my family and the other Ngunnawal families, I say welcome, welcome. And thank you all so much. And one more thing I want to tell you. I'm having a concert in February, on the 15th of February, and it's an Ealing concert, a reconciliation concert. And I invite you all along. Come along, bring a picnic basket, bring a picnic blanket and come and enjoy the music. It's about Ealing after the referendum, but one thing that keeps me going, I live in Canberra and Canberra has beautiful people and they supported us with the yes vote. So thank you all so much. Don't forget the 15th of February at Stage 88. Thank you.
Thank you. Auntie Violet, thank you so much for that beautiful welcome. And just to welcome everyone here to this, again, beautiful auditorium. So in 1968, John Gorton opened the National Library. And when we came in here this evening, it looks like an actual movie set, doesn't it? It's been so beautifully preserved and ready and gets to the heart in many ways of what the National Capital Authority does in its daily work, its long-term work, its ongoing work to preserve this area for Canberra and for the whole of Australia. So it's wonderful to have you here with us tonight for the Community Forum. Now, a few matters of housekeeping. Toilets are located down that corridor that you were waiting in before and just down to the left on that side. In case of an emergency, please follow all National Library staff to exit the building. And there is a video recording tonight and that may hopefully be posted later and the footage will be shared. But we're here today to answer your questions, which is going to be a wonderful experience to hear from the leaders of the National Capital Authority. We're going to begin with a message from the Minister, the Honourable Kristy McBain, Federal Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories. We'll then have remarks from the NCA Chair, Terry Weber, and NCA Chief Executive, Karen Doran. Then it's time for questions. We'll have about an hour for questions, so please get those ready for later on. And the questions will happen in three forms. There were questions taken when you registered. Some people put in questions then, which was terrific. There'll be questions submitted. You can submit them by Slido during the session. There'll be a QR code for you to activate that if you like. And we'll also have roving microphones on the floor, which will give you a chance. And again, an hour for that, so that really will cover off a lot of time, hopefully, to get all those questions in. What's my job? To direct traffic, essentially. For those who I don't know in the audience, I was a long-time journalist here at Parliament House for 20 years. These days, I do this sort of thing for organisations and agencies helping their community engagement. But I'm not a staff member of the NCA. The aim of tonight is to get you talking to the NCA and the NCA talking to you. So thrilled to be here to help that happen. Back to the topic of questions. We can't guarantee that all questions will be got to tonight, but we'll certainly do our best. And at the end of the evening, there's a chance for you to chat directly with some of the specialist staff of the NCA, and you might have quite specific questions that you want to put to them, and there'll be time for that as well. But for now, if we can turn your attentions to the screen for the welcome message from Minister McBain.
Hi everyone, I'm Kristy McBain, your Federal Minister for Territories. and also the member for the mighty Eden Monero just across the border. Much like Canberrans, people from across my electorate have a special connection to the National Capital, as do people from right across the country, because it really is a great place to live, to work, and to visit. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of where you're meeting today and pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. I'd like to thank you for participating today because, as I said, there's so much to love about Canberra. I went to university here and went on to work in a local law firm for a number of years, straight out of uni. I've, of course, attended a number of Skyfire events over the years, and how fantastic was it to see it back this year. I have family and friends in Canberra and come here regularly. When I was the Mayor of Bega, I did too, to meet in the very building that I'm now privileged to call my office. People are drawn here in all forms, but you live here. It's your home. And that's why it's incredibly important that you have the opportunity to help shape Canberra as it grows. And like communities across the country, it is growing. But as that happens, it's essential that we maintain the territory's unique purpose, its setting, its character, and its symbolism as our nation's capital. The National Capital Authority plays a key role in this, which is why the Australian government is committed to ensuring the NCA operates with transparency and accountability. That's why, as Minister, I issued the NCA with a statement of expectations, which they've now responded to with their statement of intent. This new framework is about ensuring the NCA operates with more transparent planning and approval processes. It's about embedding proactive community engagement as an integral part of the NCA's work, which is exactly why tonight's community forum is happening. An opportunity for you to better understand the NCA's role and its priorities for the National Capital. We've come a long way since the Griffin Plan was first inked, but we're still committed to ensuring, as Walter Burley Griffin said himself, that Canberra remains a city not like any other in the world, an ideal city of the future. You're an essential part of this ongoing development of Canberra, which is why we're pleased to welcome you to tonight's Community Forum. So for more on the changes we're implementing and the role of the NCA, I'll now hand over to Board Chair Terry Webber, followed by Chief Executive Karen Doran. Thank you very much. Great to be with you.
Good evening, and yes, I'm Terry Webber, as introduced by the Minister. It's wonderful to see the Minister's strong support for the National Capital Authority and for Canberra as a whole. We all work, support Canberra. It's a great place to live and visit, and a national capital for all Australians. Auntie Violet, thank you for your wonderful welcome to country. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as traditional custodians of the Australian Capital Territory. I pay respect to their continuing culture and contribution to the life of Canberra and surrounding regions, but probably the best thing I can say for you, Auntie Violet, is the concert on the 15th of February at Stage 88. We all need to turn up for that. Okay. Distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to welcome you to the National Capital Authority Community Forum on behalf of the National Capital Authority Board. The National Capital Authority's mission is to shape Canberra as a capital that all Australians can be proud of by ensuring it is well planned, managed, promoted, consistent with its enduring significance. I think it's wonderful to see such a strong turnout. We weren't sure just how much interest we might get for today's community forum, and I think it's great. A lot of people here from a lot of different walks of community interest, and so thank you very much for showing that interest and coming tonight. The board is committed to foster more opportunities for the community to understand and inform the work of the NCA. After all, Canberra is your home, your capital, and that is why it's fitting that tonight's forum, the first in some time, and I'd like to say, you know, COVID stopped those forums from happening, but I think that's getting used too much nowadays. We just haven't had one for a few years. It's important that we do, and we're committing that we'll have 2 next year and 2 the year after, and so forth. Tonight you'll hear an update from our Chief Executive, Karen Doran, on our strategic priorities. And of course, you'll have the questions to ask Karen and make them all hard ones, because her head's on the chopping block, right? But you will have a chance to meet the broader team. We'll be here afterwards, as said, and so, you know, if you prefer to just ask one-on-one questions, not in a public forum, that's what we're here for. There may be some areas, and you know, I don't want to use this as an excuse, but there may be some questions or areas that will be confidential or commercially sensitive, and we'll be as transparent as we possibly can. But I'm also saying that there may be some things we just can't comment on. We'll say that up front, or we'll say we can come back to you at an appropriate time to answer your questions. So tonight is really the start of the conversation that we hope will deepen in the months and years ahead about the NCA can shape Canberra as a great place to live and visit, the national capital for all Australians. Just finally, I'd like to say thanks to a good turnout from our staff at the NCA. You have given up your home time and family, so I'm very proud of the fact that so many of you came along, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Terry Webber. And now, time for Chief Executive Karen Doran. Karen.
Thank you, Catherine. Yuma, Daranuna, Daranunawal. I also acknowledge that this country that we're so lucky to live on and to work on is Ngunnawal country. I acknowledge my chair, Terry Webber, and the colleagues who've joined me tonight from the National Capital Authority. And to everyone else who is here tonight, welcome and thank you so much. I know we are all busy, and I appreciate that you've taken the time to join this conversation. I'm delighted to welcome you to our first, in a while, community forum. While it may be the first forum that we've held for some time, it definitely won't be the last. Community engagement is an important focus for the NCA. It's integral to our work and to the way we work. Regular community forums will be a cornerstone of our engagement, providing regular opportunities for open discussion on how the NCA is going and what our priorities are or should be. We've committed to doing this, as Terry said, twice a year going forward. Tonight, I want to provide an update on the NCA's priorities based on my first months in the role as Chief Executive. And after that, as has been said, we'll open to comments and questions from the floor. I'll do my best to to answer your questions, and I'm not feeling pressured by what Terry said. But if I can't, or if we can't get to all of your questions tonight, then we will follow up through emails following the forum. And again, as has been said, there'll also be an opportunity to engage directly with the broader NCA team members at the end of the question session. I'm so fortunate to have the support of an experienced and dedicated team, and I also thank you all for coming along tonight. So, the strategic objectives of the NCA are often described in simple terms as the 3 pillars of planning, managing and maintaining, and promoting the national capital. These 3 pillars are interrelated and all serve the purpose of preserving and fostering the uniqueness and special offerings of the national capital. Canberra is a planned city, the City Beautiful. This characteristic is a uniqueness of Canberra. It's an essential part of the story of the national capital and how it came to be. It is a legacy which the NCA has the responsibility to preserve, the Griffin legacy, as captured in the National Capital Plan. The NCA undertakes its planning responsibilities in two main ways. Firstly, through its regulatory role in assessing proposed works on designated and national lands for compliance with the National Capital Plan. In this capacity, we are involved in many of the most significant projects in Canberra, such as the Light Rail, the Canberra Theatre, the Noora Precinct, Anzac Park East development, and a possible National Convention Centre, just to mention a few. Secondly, our responsibility for ongoing review of the National Capital Plan itself, amending it as appropriate and necessary to reflect a changing and evolving city while preserving the legacy of the original planned city. A recent example of this is the Molonglo Town Centre amendment. These amendments are often reactive to proposals coming from others, such as government or the private sector, but there is opportunity for a proactive review when the NCA may explore an identified need or opportunity ourselves to evolve the National Capital Plan and reflect changing societal needs and expectations. But this planning role in both its aspects is not an absolute authority for the NCA, nor is it something we can do in isolation of others. The planning role is shared with ACT government. In some areas, it's shared with the Parliament of the day. But it is always subject to engagement and consultation to balance the different perspectives and views of the community and represent the interests and expectations of the nation. As Minister Kristy McBain noted in her introduction, the NCA has received a statement of expectations and responded with our statement of intent. This process of setting clear expectations and intent is critical to the planning role and responsibilities of the NCA. With two main messages coming out in that framework being around collaboration and engagement. To work collaboratively with stakeholders and the community, including the ACT government, and to engage openly in two-way conversations to enable considered longer-term plans informed by community views. Areas for discussion and considered planning going forward will include a concept vision for Commonwealth Park. Other possible areas for future discussion may include Acton Peninsula as a growing cultural precinct, Commonwealth Place and the activations that have happened in that precinct, and a broader look at the lake foreshores and the different purposes and uses of other precincts around the lake. Included in this is the important purposes of preserving some of the natural settings and conservation areas. Turning to the second pillar, maintaining the National Capital Estate. While Canberra is a relatively young city, many of its significant assets, its original assets, are ageing. Old Parliament House, the Hyatt Hotel, the Sydney Building are close to 100 years old. Last month, we celebrated the 60th anniversary of Lake Burley Griffin. With this, it means Scribner Dam and Commonwealth Avenue Bridge are also 60 years old. As you're aware, the NCA has commenced significant projects to strengthen and renew these two assets for the future needs of the city. And I'm sure we'll talk more about these important projects later tonight. We've also recently just completed a significant renewal of the National Carillon, which is 50 years old. And I must say, it's looking fantastic now, and it's so good to hear the bells playing again. But I acknowledge there is still work to do, and there will always be work to do. Federation Fountains is a particular challenge. But there is much more to the estate than just the physical and built assets. The management of parks and gardens, trees, some 500 hectares of green space, 100 hectares of grasslands, and around 19,000 trees that we maintain. Not to mention the lake itself is another important responsibility. All of this work is critical to keeping the city looking beautiful and maintaining a quality appropriate to the significance of Canberra as the national capital. It's challenging to maintain a balanced program of work that reflects the necessary upkeep of all of these assets. We hear the comments from the community when there is disappointment. I know the Rose Gardens, for instance, has been an area of such comments. But we do work hard to reflect this feedback in our forward programs of work. The further challenge is to not only maintain the estate, but to also look for opportunities to enhance it. We cannot stay static. Canberra is a young city, and arguably the building of Canberra as the national capital is still underway. Finding the right way to enhance the national capital means being open to new options and opportunities. And now to the third pillar, which is promoting the national capital. This objective has both a more formal remit and an element of fun. Importantly, we have a responsibility to support the collection and preservation of histories and stories, to educate visitors and to find ways to attract different audiences. It's timely here to refer to the report of the Joint Standing Committee, A Capital for All Australians. A number of opportunities were proposed in that report to improve the visitor experience and the access to the national capital offerings, including through closer collaboration with the national cultural institutions and through readily available information to encourage visitors and extend their visitation to all that's on offer in the area. The NCA supports such coordinated efforts and acknowledges that much good has already been undertaken in this space. The NCA has recently initiated roundtable discussions with the directors of the national cultural institutions to explore ways to advance further coordinated work in a way that complements existing efforts and is respectful of our respective roles and responsibilities. One of the agreed focus areas for this work is around access, connectivity, accessibility, and amenity in and around the Triangle and the national cultural institutions. The NCA is keen to build a brand for the National Triangle to distinguish this as a precinct with a special and unique set of offerings, to complement the many events and attractions that take place more broadly in Canberra and its regions by fostering and promoting activities that showcase the National Triangle as the heart of Canberra and the home of the national capital and its national institutions. The National Exhibition Centre will have an important role here. It already offers an exhibition to orient the visitor on the history of Canberra. And through the NCE, we offer tours of Anzac Parade and its memorials, of Reconciliation Walk and its stories of First Nations peoples, and of Blundell Cottage. And we have ideas to do more through tourist maps and activating other attractions such as the National Carillon. The NCA also delivers a number of significant national events. Our Australia Day event has become a headline, with the Lights on the Lake in 2023 and the drone show Flight in 2024. And I'm pleased to say that the NCA has been supported again by the National Australia Day Council to put on an event for Australia Day 2025. Importantly, the NCA enables many events within the National Triangle. Floriade, Enlighten. As I noted earlier, keeping the parks, Commonwealth Park and Kings Park, Commonwealth Place and the lake itself in good condition allows for these important events to take place on the most wonderful of backdrops. In these events, we work closely with colleagues at ACT Government, and I look forward to continued collaboration with our ACT Government colleagues to explore opportunities not only to improve or expand the events, but to look at efficiencies and innovations in how they're brought together. These have become well-loved, standing part of our city's tourism offering, and so we should plan for them as such. So in summary, there are two important elements of this role for me. The NCA works for all Australians, and the importance of the national remit is in everything we do. The NCA will achieve most by working collaboratively with the ACT Government, national cultural institutions, businesses and the community. We are an enabler of many things, and relationships and engagement are paramount. That's why I'm delighted to have this opportunity tonight to signal the NCA's intention to engage the community in our work of fostering Canberra as a great place to live, to visit, and as a national capital for all Australians. Thank you.
Karen, thank you very much. Karen, do you want to take a seat straight away, and we'll virtually get started at this moment? I know. We're moving to the discussion part of the evening. So how it's going to work is quite simple. If you would like to submit questions via Slido, if you've used that platform before, works really well. For those who are new to it, the questions will come up. You can also vote questions up or down. If questions are popular, they come to the front more quickly. Use that QR code, that will take you there. The NCA staff with microphones will roam around the floor for questions on the floor. So we'll start with the Slido, we'll then later go to the floor. When they come to you, if you feel comfortable, we'd love you to stand up, simply because it's quite a full hall and it helps see the people who are speaking. And if you feel comfortable, please let us know your name and where you're from. It helps the NCA with follow-up and being able to really look carefully at all the questions that are being asked. To support the recording tonight, when we get to questions, we'll remind you when we get the microphone out, please wait for the microphone to come to you and please speak into the microphone. All of this will be recorded as well for the NCA, and if they miss the question, it becomes a bit harder to follow up again. And if you have something you'd like to ask at the time, we'll come around to you. That's everything, Karen. Quite straightforward. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from you, Karen, and we'll start off with some of the questions that were given in the registration. Now, not surprising, one of the hot topics for the registration period was the light rail. And so this is an amalgam of many of the questions that came in on the light rail. Karen, can you explain what is the role of the NCA with the future light rail as its construction continues?
Thank you. An easy one to start with. The light rail is a project of the ACT government, so the role of the NCA is largely in the planning approval space, as I was mentioning in our various roles earlier. But it's such a significant project that we have worked closely with ACT government through their earlier phases of design, planning, considering environmental and heritage issues on the light rail, and do that in order to streamline as much as we can what is ultimately the planning responsibility, the approval of the works approval that we have in this process. So it's an interesting area because it is one where we often get questions and questions of detail where it isn't our immediate responsibility, but we do try to, through our work with ACT government, also be able to support the community in understanding those processes.
So as we look at the planning phase now and the approval phase, what is the NCA looking at?
The light rail is being developed in stages, as everyone's aware. So stage 2A, which is the next phase, which is extending the light rail from Alinga Street into a Commonwealth Park stop. That stage we have approved, and so it's moving into construction fairly shortly. The next stage, which is stage 2B, is the element which goes from Commonwealth Park and ultimately to Woden. It's the element which runs through the National Triangle and or the parliamentary zone, and so is the one that impacts most significantly on our planning responsibilities in that area. That one is at a fairly early stage of what is a series of approval processes that need to be gone through. It's currently working through the environmental approval processes, developing a draft EIS, which will be considered by DQ.
DQ being?
Oh, don't ask me the acronym, I knew you'd do that. Climate, environment, energy, and water.
Yep.
Thank you. That's a prerequisite for it coming to us for works approval. Stage 2B will also go through a parliamentary approval stage, so it has to be considered by both houses of parliament because it will run through the parliamentary zone. And again, that's a prerequisite to our works approval stage. We expect works approval somewhere around the end of works approval to be submitted somewhere around the end of 25-26. So we're actually a long way away from that stage, but we're already in detailed collaborative discussions with ACT
Excellent,
government.
thank you very much. All right, the first question from Slido. Are there any plans to update the National Triangle public signage? Because some of the signs are looking a bit poorly peeled and faded. That's their words, not my words.
No, and they're probably not wrong, although I'm pleased to say we do have a program underway which is looking at improving the wayfinding signage around the National Triangle. We've already installed, I think the number is 29 of the larger traffic signs. We have a program that's looking at the interpretive signage as well, which will be signage around the various memorials in the Triangle. This will be an ongoing program. I know there is still more to do, and we expect this work to continue over the next 2 or 3 years as we progressively move through the various signs.
Excellent, that's great. What's the status of the Commonwealth Avenue Bridge strengthening and widening? Has it been delayed as reported in the Canberra Times?
Thank you. The status is, and this is one of the areas that Terry mentioned before, we are in live procurement at the moment on that project, so it is a bit difficult to talk in too much detail. We are expecting to have an outcome of that procurement, hopefully before Christmas, but close after, if not by the end of the year. That will mean we have a head contractor appointed. That head contractor will then confirm that the program of works, which will allow us to talk in much more detail about timelines and expectations for how that work will be staged and step out. Our expectations at this stage are that it will be a project of around 18 months. So if we're looking commencement in early 25, we're probably towards the back end of 26 for completion. Sorry, doing maths in my head. I should be good at maths, but so there are expected timelines, but again, that will be clarified when we have a head contractor in place who's worked through all of that. In terms of are we late, as was reported, we probably are when you compare it to our earliest estimates when we first commenced this process, which is a budget business case that goes into a government approval process. But we're confident that when we get to the appointed head contractor phase, we'll have a program of works then that we can we'll be able to deliver and stay on timeline with.
Excellent. Here's a question about car parks. Is there a reason why large car parks, like the one currently being built near the National Gallery of Australia and Kings Avenue, is not being built underground as per the Burley Griffin plan?
Oh, okay. That's interesting. It's not my understanding that the Burley Griffin plan provided for underground car parks. We do have our expert here who might be able to confirm that later. I do understand in the triangle that the Griffin plan did anticipate the need for structured car parks, particularly around the government office precincts as those areas grew larger and the workforce grew larger. The need for parking was foreseen in the plan. And so I think that the structured car park that's currently being built near the John Gordon building is consistent with what those initial expectations might have been.
And how are the car park buildings going in general? So is that going well, the car park planning for the area?
For that project itself?
In general.
In general.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, there's around 9,000, I think, parking spaces in the parliamentary triangle zone. It, particularly since COVID and working from home has become a bit more of a working pattern, it seems to provide fairly sufficiently for the workforce in the area. We do know there's further developments coming with a national security precinct having been earmarked, and it will bring around 5,000 more employees into the area. That's the reason why the structured car park was being built in anticipation of that.
Karen, thank you. I'm going to go to questions in the room. So just to remind you, what we'll ask you, if you're comfortable to stand up, please do so we can see you. Comfortable with your name, please do. That will help. And also wait for the microphone to get to you. So gentleman there in the middle, thanks. The microphone will come over to you. Thank you very much. And we'll get through. Keep your questions, if you can, reasonably short so that we can get them all in. Thank you.
Thank you for having the forum. My name's Gregor Manson. I've got a distinguished record writing plans for Blue Mountains National Park, Perisher, the zoning plan for the Great Barrier Reef, etc. One of the things that I notice in the planning, and I also wrote the heritage plan for Old Parliament House and got it repainted at the time. There's a thing here called scale, and when I look at the history of the NCA, and you talk about 5,000 trees and 3,000 car parks, when we did the master planning for the Blue Mountains and the World Heritage nomination, we expected our visitation to go from 2 to 6 to 10. It's now at 6 after 20 years. Canberra is a very small village in the scheme of management, in my experience. Managing the Great Barrier Reef, it's a very big area with lots of people and visitors and thousands of ships. I find that the NCA looks very closely at things like mowing the grass and things like that. The question I put on the website was, I think we really need to look at that 50-year vision. And I think you're underway with that, or you were in the last couple of years, but you need to get the right people that are not looking at the grass. You need to get some world-level, really good brains to sit around, and I'd say you could do that in a week with a map.
Thanks. Thank you. So we'll get to the answer, that's all. So microphone back there, and we'll ask people to keep the questions reasonably short so that we can get to the answers. Karen.
So thank you.
50-year plan.
Few layers to that question. Initially, I did outline the 3 purposes that we had, and so maintaining and managing the estate is a very important purpose, and one we do take very seriously. It needs to be maintained at a quality that is suitable for a national capital, and I think I would like to think that is an expectation of people who live in Canberra, but of Australians more broadly. But yes, you're right, that longer term planning piece is also a critical objective that we have. I think Canberra has benefited from being a planned city to start with. The Griffin plan has held up incredibly well now for nearly 100 years, and we still refer to the principles and the essence of that. I think I'm certainly agreeing with you that that longer term planning work is something that the NCA can look at going forward, and it's there in some of the master plans that I referred to. So Kings Park Master Plan, a Commonwealth Park Master Plan, they're all the small pieces that build to keep the Griffin legacy alive, but also to evolve it and to keep it relevant and modern. Yes, agreeing with you. I'm not sure I agree that we could sit down and do it in a week, but we certainly do try to find the time to commit to keeping that planning work and that ongoing review as one of our priorities.
Karen, thank you. That's great. And we've got a question here. We'll get ready with the next question down here as well. We'll come down to the front here to the lady and then up there. We'll try and move around the room. So if you've had a question, we probably won't go back to you. Thank you. Go there and then down here to the lady in the second row. Thank you. Sir, thank you.
Thank you. Damien Haas, the Public Transport Association of Canberra. The NCA granted planning approval for the national security multi-storey car park next to Kings Avenue to be built without a traffic study being conducted, which seems odd for a facility designed to attract more cars to the area. Will the same flexibility around NCA planning approval to missing paperwork apply to the light rail Stage 2 project?
Damien, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I caught the
premise. Do you want the premise of the car park that they were mentioning?
Yes, there were. You said
again,
some element,
which car
wasn't?
park was it?
National security car park on Kings Avenue.
Right.
You granted planning approval.
Is the mic back there? Sorry,
That's okay. I can actually hear him better without the mic.
Oh.
That's all right. I was listening. The NCA granted planning approval to the national security multi-storey car park without the required traffic study being conducted or supplied to the NCA. My question is, will the NCA apply the same sort of flexible planning approval to missing paperwork for the light rail Stage 2 project?
Okay. I can't answer the first part of your question because I'm not aware of the circumstances, but the NCA will apply a rigorous process to the approval of the light rail works approvals, and will apply the principles of the National Capital Plan to that process.
Karen, thank you. Next question here, and then we'll get the microphone next. That's great. There, terrific. Thank you. Yes.
Yes. Beatrice Woodard Bailey, historian, honorary professor ANU. As a historian, I see you have an enormous responsibility changing the bush capital, as it is so well known overseas. I've lived a long time overseas, and so famous and so unique, into a capital which, like so many other capitals in Australia, around the world, is surrounded by trams. We have only had one comparison. Well, let me first say, I know Griffin had a tram in his plans, but if he lived today, I'm sure he would have preferred an electric bus which doesn't leave scars all over this lovely plan, and which is can move, flexible. We were talking about events, and
Beatrice is great. We'll just get you to your question,
yes,
please, if we
my
can.
question is, we've only had one comparison between bus and tram in 2012, the contents of which was ignored. Don't you think it is time to get an expert committee to make a new comparison about the effect
So a question about the electric bus.
about between
Thanks, Beatrice.
a bus and a tram?
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Beatrice. I think, as I said at the start, the light rail is a project of the ACT government. The ACT government has undertaken those comparative analyses of different options, different modes of transport, and that's what's informed their decision on going ahead with the light rail. Just in terms of your comments about Canberra as a bush capital, I agree that is one of our special and unique features, and that is something we seek to preserve under the National Capital Plan through the maintenance of the hills, ridges and buffer zones which separate each of the town centres.
Karen, thank you. And I'm not wanting to interrupt people's questions, but can you please form a question in your mind before you stand up for everybody so we can get right to them and get through as many? And apologies if that feels too firm, but I think to get through tonight is going to be essential. Thanks. Got a question here and then next to them there. Thanks. Yep.
There first.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. You're right. There and then there.
G'day, my name's David. My question is that in your opening statement you stated that we cannot stay static. So what is the appetite for greater density in the inner city areas, particularly Braddon and in the areas of the inner south? Standalone housing doesn't seem particularly appropriate for a contemporary city structure, but I'm understanding there are heritage and controls, and how do you intend to balance those two competing priorities?
Thank you. And I think you've, in some ways, you've hinted at the answer in your question. It is a matter of balance, and one of the most challenging aspects of our job is balancing those competing priorities, maintaining the legacy of the planned city, but evolving it so that it, as I said, it remains relevant, it remains modern. The housing needs of Australia is a national issue. It's a priority of the Commonwealth government. It's one we take very seriously, as I know does the ACT government. We look to work in our sort of shared planning responsibilities to look for opportunities wherever we can to enable or to facilitate increased housing consistent with their urban development priorities, which is looking at increased density, reducing the urban spread, and making better use of increased density in the centres, which makes better use of the infrastructure, etc., which already exists.
So Karen, do you envisage changes or focused examination over the next 3 to 5 years?
It's an interesting one because, again, we don't have a direct responsibility or ability to impact either land release or housing in the way ACT government does. But there are some opportunities within the division of some lands or some precincts between ACT government and ourselves, which we certainly can and have started exploring in order to, as I said, enable what is a housing crisis in Australia.
Thank you. Well, it's a hot topic, that's for sure. Thank you.
G'day. So my question relates specifically to Draft Amendment 100, which I understand went out for public consultation earlier this week. So for those of you who don't know, Draft Amendment 100 proposes moving an extension of Knoll Place around near the Canberra Theatre car park very slightly to the north. So this isn't a road that has been built yet, it hasn't been built yet, and the Draft Amendment proposes moving it very slightly to the north. So my question is why it took the NCA 5 months after the board agreed to pursue this draft amendment for that draft amendment to be released for public consultation, let alone be approved? And does the fact that it took the NCA 5 months to release this draft amendment for public consultation suggest a need for some more streamlined approvals processes for amendments to the National Capital Plan for such minor changes?
Thank you for your question. Look, I think the reality is that it may have taken 5 months, but that was well within the need for that amendment, in that there was no urgency driving the need for that amendment given the timeline for the theatre development project. So, you know, we have a broad range of work actually. We have priorities that we need to manage, and so we work to the relative urgency of different aspects of work.
Thank you. We've got a question, just a question here, then a question there, and then a question there, the lady up there. So I'll get the microphone up there next from here. Thank you.
Hi. John O'Donnell's my name, Vice Commodore at the Canberra Yacht Club.
John, can you put the microphone near your mouth?
Firstly, thank you for the forum tonight.
Thank you.
And also to say we have a good relationship with the NCA, and looking forward to meeting you in person and continuing that good relationship. My question relates to the proposed work on the dam, on Scrivener Dam, which we're in consultation with you and understanding the impact of that. The main impact being the lowering of the lake level to facilitate the works at the dam. It's been delayed a few times, I understand, and I just wanted to get your view on why it's being delayed and what's your expectation for the timing.
Thank you. Again, we're in the final stages of procurement on that project as well. I'm more certain of an announcement imminently on that one, which will allow the works to commence probably before the end of the year. Now, what I can't tell you exactly now is what that means for the timing of when the dam will need to be lowered, but certainly once we've got that detail in the program of work, we'll be consulting closely with the Lake Users Group to give you that information.
Great. We'll have a question here, we'll have one from the board, and then we'll go up the top of the room there. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Alex. Taking us back to the tram, 2B, and the issue of balancing green space and demand for more housing. So you've got Adelaide Avenue, the route for the tram under 2B, the green space around it. So I imagine there'll be pressure from ACT government to develop some of that land for additional housing. And I was wondering, what is the position of the NCA on that? Do you have authority around that green belt, around that arterial road or not? I was told in Curtin, in North Curtin, there's some housing development plan proposed. An ACT government representative told me in the Curtin shops that's NCA authority is over that, and that you require more green space than does the ACT. So just sort of wondering how it's all going to work when that tram...
It's a great question, but it also gets to the question of what the NCA does have in Curtin, because it's quite specific, isn't it? It says 2 issues there.
There is. There can be sort of complexity in this space as well as to, whose land it is in different areas. But certainly in Curtin specifically, the NCA does have responsibility for an area of land which has been designated for diplomatic purposes, and so that is directly in our responsibility. There is a slice of land that's close to that precinct, which is ACT land, and they have recently started consultation about their plans to develop that part of Curtin lands. More broadly down those, as you said, the green belts down Adelaide Avenue, I think it's fair to say a lot of that is ACT lands, and they certainly are doing some thinking around what opportunities there might be as the light rail goes down that precinct.
Karen, thanks for clarifying. Yeah, that's great. A question here, and then we'll go to the question at the back. Can we please have an update on how Kings Park Improvements Stage 3 will improve pedestrian and cyclist safety across Kings Avenue Bridge, and why are the paths on the south side of the bridge closed?
South side of the bridge. Thank you for the question. Kings Park Improvements has been a staged piece of work that has looked at improving parking, pedestrian movement, separation of cyclists' movement through Kings Park. The work started down the Blundell Cottage end of Kings Park and have moved towards the Kings Avenue Bridge. As you've said, we're now at looking at stage 3. We're in the planning designs for that, and it will have the same objective of looking at improving parking and separating the cyclist paths from the pedestrian paths. That work won't actually go onto Kings Avenue Bridge itself, and the path on the south side, which I'm just trying to get my north, south, east and west right, but I think the path that's being referred to is the one which actually isn't currently a path on Kings Avenue Bridge. So Kings Avenue Bridge only has a pedestrian cycle path on the one side. The path
on the western side,
yes, thank you. Yeah, western. I thought it was western east. Yeah. So on the other side, it is only a narrow walkway, which was never intended to be for pedestrians or cyclists.
That's the one that's closed.
That's the one that's being closed for reasons of safety. There had actually been what we call desire paths, which had been created to get you onto that, I shouldn't even call it a walkway, that strip of which I believe is only 750 millimetres wide. So it was never meant for access for pedestrians nor bikes.
Okay, thank you. We've got, before that question, we'll just get the next microphone. Yeah, there. So over here and then down here. And then let's get something up the back after that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ernestine. I'm a public servant and I actually work in the Parliamentary Triangle, and I choose to cycle to work. Yes, I'm one of those people that you glare at when you are driving around the National Triangle. There is very little safe separated cycle infrastructure in the National Triangle. You have just very kindly pointed out one of them, which is outside Blundell's Cottage, but that's not near any, well, apart from one government building, that's not near the majority of government buildings. And the only other concession to cyclists is sharing footpaths, which really doesn't work, going over the bridges in particular. And the painted line on Commonwealth Avenue, where I have cars whizzing past me at 70 kilometres an hour. So I see this to be a very car-oriented area of Canberra, and I think there's something that could be done to improve commuting for cyclists and to improve the experience for visitors. You talked about connectivity between the national institutions. I think there's amazing scope for having some sort of cycling network where visitors can get their Brompton from the tourist centre and whiz around the National Triangle, but it's not safe right now. My question is this going to change?
Thank you.
Thank you. Look, yes, we certainly support active travel, and in all of our works we try to bring the facilitation of active travel into either our own master planning work or when we are considering the works approvals of other developments in the area. We have made some inroads to that. Kings Park, we talked about the Commonwealth Bridge renewal works will widen the pedestrian and cycling paths on both sides of Commonwealth Avenue Bridge, which will allow separation of cyclists and pedestrians in that area. I agree there is great opportunity to do a lot more in this space, and it certainly is a priority, as I mentioned before, around access, connectivity, accessibility, not only for cyclists, but also for people with children, prams, wheelchairs, just facilitating all of that sort of ease of movement and access in the triangle is a priority. It will take time, but it's one we are committed to.
Karen, thank you. There's a question that dovetails quite well. I'll take that here, and then we'll go to the question that we had here, and then we'll go at the back, so get something at the back, so thank you. Are there plans to improve pedestrian lighting around the lake to improve safety at night? Which I think relates to cycling, but to everybody. It's, lighting.
Yes,
Good
yes,
question.
and I definitely put lighting in that list of accessibility, connectivity, amenity, just improving that generally around the triangle. That section of the lake that I think's been highlighted is around the Commonwealth Place precinct, and that is one of the precincts that we're also focusing on as our next piece of master planning work to just look at improvements, potential for improvements in that area.
Do you think in terms of lighting, is there anything concrete, or is that a longer term plan?
They are longer term plans, and I think it is part of our challenge in, as we'll see, and I really do welcome these discussions, and I welcome all of the suggestions. We do have long lists of potential and opportunities, and we will keep adding to those lists. What we do is try to weave them into the master planning or the concept visions that we do for precincts. And then as we're rolling out our maintenance programs of work, we try to pick up what elements of that we can as we're doing our regular maintenance.
Great. All right, we'll take that question. There's one at the back there, so here and there, and then we'll get one from around this area. Thank you.
Hello, Aidan Fergus, local resident. I was just hoping to see if there was any update on the future of the Canadian flagpole at Regatta Point that had to be taken down in 2020 due to rot in the wood. I understand that there was some discussions with the Canadians and that there was a proposed update on your website in around 2022, but I haven't seen anything since that. Thank you.
I'm guessing this is an issue that not everybody is across. I'm just saying that because I'm not across it. I'm not across the Canadian flagpole.
We had a beautiful wooden Canadian flagpole, which was a gift from the Canadian government to ourselves, which was located in Regatta Point, as you've said. I don't know the exact timing, but it was unfortunately damaged and was decided it couldn't be remediated for safety. It was removed. We have been able to preserve some of the flagpole, so it has been cut into segments and sealed, so it is preserved and it is on display in various places, including in my office, I'm lucky enough to say. In terms of replacing that flagpole, you're correct, we did start discussions on that. Those discussions haven't progressed. There is no update that I can provide tonight. It was a gift from one government to the other, so other than having sort of raised the issue, there's not a lot more we can do unless the initiative comes from the other side.
Thank you for that.
I should say though, sorry, there is obviously a flag to Canada as part of the international flag display on the other side of the lake.
Thank you, Karen. At the back here, and then down here somewhere.
Yes, good evening. Gil Miller, SME and Canberra advocate. 40 years ago when I came to Canberra, everyone said to us, why are you going to Canberra? After 26,000 Uber rides over the last 8 years, I still have people saying to me that come from all areas of Australia and around the world saying, our friend said, what are you doing going to Canberra? Has the NCA got any plans for changing that attitude?
Oh, that is such a great question, isn't it, Karen? Because that goes to one of your pillars, doesn't it?
It does.
That pillar's a plant, I'm sure. Was he a plant to get you talking about this tonight?
No, he wasn't. Look, I'm a 30-year Canberran, and I think I've seen a lot of change over that time. I think the recognition of Canberra, the sort of some of those preconceptions of Canberra are starting to change. The city is growing, it's becoming more dynamic, it's and you know, a lot of this is through ACT government initiatives as well. You know, I think it's attracting a wider demographic, a younger demographic. Families are staying here through the generations. So there is a lot that's changing in Canberra. It is a particular challenge at the NCA, I think, as to how we change the attitude of Canberra, or how we promote awareness of what a great place Canberra is to the rest of Australia. And it's one that I think, you know, this community forum, which we've kept as a local discussion this time around, it's something we'll be looking at in terms of how we extend that discussion, but also that promotion of Canberra to the wider Australian audience. And if anyone has any ideas, I would certainly welcome them.
That's great. That's great. Great opportunity for people to engage in. Terrific. There's a question here somewhere. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. I'll see your 30 years and raise you 65. But anyway,
well done. Congratulations.
A couple of us lodged questions on Slido that haven't popped up yet, and they're to do with the east basin of the lake, and you, to quote you back, ease of movement. Currently, if you want to walk around the east basin, over Kings Avenue Bridge, down to Dairy Flat Road, come back through the wetlands and end up at Kingston. Or if you've got a dog in tow, you can enjoy the sights of Fishwick and come back down Canberra Avenue. My question is, consideration be given to a boardwalk above the lake, which doesn't impinge on the Jerrabomba wetlands, and it also entail a bridge or two bridges of some sort from the foreshore to the boardwalk and from the boardwalk to Clare Holland House. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you for the question. And I will say I do that walk regularly myself, and yeah, there is opportunity there. It's an area of the lake that is under ACT government management, and this is one of our challenges, I suppose. We have looked at the idea of a path around the entirety of the lake. That is a project that would have to be a joint project. There are segments which are in our management and control, and there are segments which are with ACT government. So it is something that we can keep on our sort of opportunities list, and we'll promote those discussions as the timing and the opportunity comes up. In the meantime, we are looking at the segments which are sort of either more in our control or the timing is right, and looking at building that connection from Kings Park, around Commonwealth Park, around West Basin and down to Acton Peninsula. And so, you know, that side of the lake, I know it's not addressing your need, but hopefully it will give you a sense of, you know, what we can do in the future when that sort of commitment can extend to the other areas of the lake foreshore.
I suppose because everyone loves the space so much, they want to be out there and walking around. We'll do a few Slido questions so we can get to those, and then we'll get some more. So when we finish with a question here, and then let's get something around this area. Yep, terrific. So a few Slidos. Will there be any increase in building height restrictions on the light rail route to Woden? 10 floors is not a tall building, the questioner says.
Okay, that might be one of detail which someone might want to come down at the end of the session to talk about. But at the broader level, the National Capital Plan does have an absolute height restriction, which is set at the base of the flag, I believe, for Parliament House, which sort of is based on the principle that nothing should go above that point to maintain the vista through the central part of Canberra. In the precincts outside of that area, there is a bit more flexibility on height limits. We tend to start at I think it's the 25 metre sort of level, but that is, there is opportunity there for discussions to be had around height limits. But again, I will defer or refer, if the person's in the room, to the Chief Planner on those, on the more detailed aspects of that.
Karen, thank you. I'll take you right to this precinct. What is that precinct?
Noora.
Noora precinct has moved, has it?
It has moved to
not
Acton.
familiar. So I think there are a lot of terms and things often that people from some area will know and others will not. So can you tell us a bit about the precinct? It has moved to Acton. Are there any major new public spaces planned for the National Triangle? And then if not, why not?
Okay. So yes, Noora Precinct, which is a commitment to an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander knowledge and cultural centre, as well as a national resting place, is being built on Acton Peninsula, where the current IATSIS building is. It will be an expansion of that building. It will introduce a collections and an open display area for the public, and then the national resting place will be a separate building but located as well on Acton Peninsula. It will certainly change Acton Peninsula, and I think I referred to it briefly in my introduction. It is an area of possible future planning work, just looking at how that precinct will change with these developments. It will become a cultural precinct in its own right over time. In terms of the National Triangle, I think the reference is Noora was originally planned to be in the National Triangle area. It was going to be located around the Commonwealth Place precinct. At this stage, there are no specific plans for expansion in the Triangle, but I think it's fair to say that there is opportunity there. There is still open space in the Triangle, and as I said before, Canberra is still very much in a growing phase, so there is potential there in the longer term future.
Thank you very much. We'll do one more of these, then to questions in the room again. Blue-green algae. What is the NCA doing to stop blue-green algal blooms in the lake?
Yes, this is. I know this is one that the community is very interested in, and of course we are as well. The lake's a beautiful asset, and we'd love it to also be a swimmable asset and an asset that can be used for recreation. We have tried various things over the years to address this issue, and you've possibly seen most recently in our annual report and picked up in the media an attempted trial at ultrasonic pontoons, which was a mechanical process that vibrated the water to try and break up the algae. While it showed some success, it wasn't sufficiently successful to sort of actually show it would reduce the algae blooms, and so we unfortunately can't progress with that. We have tried other things in the past as well, which have not yet found us a solution. The challenge with Lake Burley Griffin is that we control the water or we manage the water in the lake. A large part of the cause of the algae blooms comes from the catchment areas and the flows of water coming into the lake and the nutrients that it can bring with it. So we work closely with the Water Catchment Coordination Group, which brings together involved parties, ACT government predominantly, but also regional councils, New South Wales, Icon Water, everyone who has a responsibility for some of those flows into the lake. And I think, we're all working together to try and improve this situation.
Problem Australia-wide, isn't it?
And it is an Australia-wide issue.
Sorry, we're not going back to the same question at the same people at the moment. Over here, and then another question from around here. Great.
Thanks, Karen. Tough gig. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Oh, compliment.
Thank you. No, I'll take that.
Especially when you're told your head's on the chopping block. I hope you see that you're doing a great job. Thank you. My question was around the blue-green algae. So you just beat me, but I do want to pursue it just a little bit further, because it is such a big metaphorical issue with our city.
Just come to the question if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Would you be up for? I'm having to modify it a little bit because you just got it asked. But what about a lot more floating gardens to try and help with this, and especially around Acton waterfront, because it is a fairly stale area. We've got a beach there. No one wants to swim there. It's a serious issue, and I just think the floating gardens was something that was in the original place plan for Acton waterfront. I just wonder if it's something you'd be open to.
Thanks very much. We'll have a question.
Yeah, again, it's something we have tried in the form of planting around the edge of the lake to try and provide that sort of natural, almost filtration. It's probably something that works more outside of the lake, so in the land around the lake, and again capturing the flows of water as they're coming into the lake and providing that natural filtering. It's something we have reflected in our master planning, for instance, around the Yarralumla Bay area. We have a master plan or a concept vision which looks at a sort of garden filtration type construct there. But that is ACT land, and it's something we would have to work with the ACT on when they're looking at doing works on what are currently the concrete sewerage or water, stormwater systems that are in place there. So.
Karen, thank you. Why don't you have a drink of water while I
Thank
just
you.
say a couple of things, because you've been on the move. Now, we've got two questions there and there, but we've got 5 minutes effectively left. Just hands up for people who would like to still ask a question, because I'd like to get as many as we can. Thank you, great. So we'll go there, after there, and there. We'll do those two, and we'll see how we're placed. We're making sure we go to people who haven't asked a question. When that's exhausted, if there is space, sure, you can have a second one, but not until then. Thanks. Sorry. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. Paris Lord, Canberra by bike. We do slow social rides, bike buses and the like. It goes a little bit to Ernestine's earlier question. I've tried using the web form, but without success yet. So for a lot of people that use the triangle, unless you're in a car, it's openly hostile to you. So I would like to invite you and your colleagues to come along on a slow ride or a walk, so we can point out a lot of things, a lot of quick things, cheap things, to make it less hostile and a bit more welcoming for all ages and abilities. Thank you.
That sounds great.
Thank you. No,
yeah, that sounds
absolutely
great.
Take you up on that offer, and I'll volunteer all of my crew who are here today as well.
Do you get down there much to wander, to have a look?
I do walk a lot. I don't cycle a lot, and I know that the challenges are different for the two modes of transport. We have talked internally about doing a walk around the triangle just to understand some of the accessibility issues and the connectivity. So I think it's a great idea. Thank you, and we'll take you up.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you there, and in these two.
Hi, my name's Steve Jordan. I'm the president of the ACT Equestrian Association. Straight at pillar number 2, the managing and maintaining of the green spaces in particular. We're finding there's a lot of loss of the green space currently occurring, and it does impact on I guess, the vision of what the city was all about. So you're talking Curtin in particular. A couple of the other areas as well are struggling with losing green space and urban infill, I guess.
So, sorry, did you say equestrian?
That's correct,
Just
yes.
to understand where it's coming from. So the horse, yeah, horse riders.
Equestrian.
Green,
okay.
yeah, green spaces, yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so that is something that falls into the ACT government remit. I think territory adjustment sort of manages the access to horse riding spaces. Green space more generally, certainly that is part of our remit, is to preserve, as I referred to before, those hills, ridges, buffers, zones to keep those corridors of green space live in the plan.
Karen, thank you.
No, I take your point. It is a balance, but...
Thank you. Thank you. What these two, we'll combine them, the two that are here, so the lady, thank you, and then there's someone just nearby with a question. So we'll put them together, just very quickly. Just short questions, we're nearly out of time. Thank you.
Just quickly, my question's linked to the previous one. I'd like to know whether, my name's Irene Davies from the Lake Burley Griffin Guardians. And
Hi, Irene, it's good to see you.
for meeting with us. But I'd like to know, really, whether the NCA would support in future the listing of Lake Burley Griffin on the National Heritage Plan, so we don't get another swap of the lake for part of horse paddocks over in Curtin or wherever it was, and the loss of green space that has entailed.
Thank you so much. And the second question was here, so we'll just combine the two in the answer.
My name's Anne Kent, and I'm asking an historical question, really. The Lake Burley Griffin Guardians were very pleased that you decided not to remove the poplars from outside this building at our request. But I wondered what other examples your crew has over the historical period to show how they've been influenced by community preferences.
That might be a good question for the mingle, I'm thinking, that second one.
Sounded like it,
and
yes.
the listing of Lake Burley Griffin.
Thank you. Yes, that'd be good.
Great. The Lake Burley Griffin question, the first question about
the listing.
protection.
So it's listed on the Commonwealth Heritage Register. Yes, that's what I was.
Thank you very much. Well, extensive questions. Well, please give Karen a great round of applause. That is a full hour of unfiltered questions. So well done. Thank you very much. And now, Karen, over to you to close proceedings.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to go back there? Or... Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. And thank you again, everyone, for taking the time to be here tonight and for your very committed, I think, and thought-provoking questions. It is wonderful to see such strong interest in our stewardship of the National Capital on your behalf and on behalf of the broader Australian community. Tonight was really an invitation to an ongoing conversation with the NCA about our work. And I know, some issues were raised tonight. We might not have had the immediate answers you were looking for, but a lot of these things are long-term issues, and having your insights and your input allows us to feed them into what is our longer-term planning and our longer-term programs of work. So our team will be back in touch with you in the coming weeks to provide an update on the questions we weren't able to get to tonight and on future opportunities for engagement. We're working through the options for a next community forum, which we expect to be in the second quarter of next year. So as I said before, 2 a year, so somewhere around May and November is the target. We'll share our thinking on not only the timing, but also the format of that forum with you shortly. And again, if any feedback on, how you felt this worked tonight or what we could do differently, please provide it. So again, thank you for your time and for your contributions tonight.